Welcome to BibleStudyOffer.com. My name is Ariel, and I am a virtual coach. And we are doing lesson number 3 today. Why does God allow for suffering? Enormous lesson, tremendous question. Let's dive right in. So we're not just talking about any kind of suffering either. It's not just the fear or pain Hitler may have been experiencing when his empire of death was collapsing. That's not the kind of pain and suffering we're asking the question about. It's the pain of an infant fighting cancer. It's the pain of a family whose loving father dies in a car accident. It's the suffering of those we deem as innocent, powerless, or wholly unrelated to the evil of this world. Why do they have to suffer? Not the wicked, but the individuals that we consider to be innocent and good. Why do they have to experience suffering? And that is a question we're going to be addressing. We're going to start, there's plenty of different ways to approach this. We're going to start by asking a question regarding God himself, because obviously he's at the center of that question. If he exists, if he is powerful, and if he is what the Bible describes him to be, which is love, 1 John 4:8, he who does not love God does not know God, for God is love. If the Bible is so clear and unequivocal in describing God as love, why do we have this? Because there are other places in the Bible that they describe him as all-powerful, almighty. How can you have an all-powerful, almighty God that is also a loving God, and yet good people suffer? 3-year-olds going through St. Jude for cancer treatments and not recovering and dying all too soon. Why does that have to happen? So the idea of verses like that, I've discovered both when I was a nurse, that when I would try to comfort people by reminding them of God's love and God's goodness, many people actually would respond angry, understandably so, because in those moments of personal anguish, when it touches our lives, it is difficult to reconcile the idea that God is love, why is my little girl suffering like this? God is love, why is my daddy gone? Those are the questions that plague humanity universally, and legitimately so. And we will try to explore some answers that will hopefully not just provide information, but a source of comfort and healing. Love, that is a loaded, broad word. What does it mean? For some people, it's sex. For other people, it's just an emotion. What is it, though? We could ask philosophers, poets, etc., what is love? The Bible actually provides a quite succinct definition that I found to be one of the most comprehensive and solid. 1 Corinthians 13:4 and 5 says, "Love is patient and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own." And that is huge. It is not provoked, thinks no evil. So to say that God is love could mean many things. So the Bible doesn't give too much space for us to come up with our own definition of what love is, but rather gives it so that we can be informed what to expect from God, a God that describes himself or defines himself as a God that is love. This idea of not seeking its own, it's another way of saying he's not selfish or self-focused or self-seeking, has risks to it. One of the examples that I like to think of is parenting. Selfless love opens itself for being misunderstood, and it does it knowingly. One of the most misunderstood individuals in our planet are good parents. Parents that are trying to be conscientious and make decisions for the best interest of their children, not themselves. They are more likely to hear statements like, "Why are you trying to control me? None of my friends' parents do this. They are allowed to do that. How come you don't let me do these kind of things? You don't understand me. You don't love me." Loving a child that does not know the realities of this world, that does not understand how a lot of the dynamics of this world functions, and wants to start making decisions on their own, if a parent is to do its due diligence and duty in protecting that child, there's a high probability that that child will misunderstand that parent, because that parent is wholly invested in their best interest, not what is comfortable or convenient for them. For many of these individuals, myself included, time seems to change their opinions they once believed to be so true. And that is a statement true of myself. It wasn't just time, but becoming a parent myself. as I reflect back in the moments where I thought my parents were being so unloving towards me, now I recognize they were being extremely loving and selfless towards me. What is the condition of this world? Well, we're going to now not ignore the reality. Matthew 24:12 says that, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. It's not just lawlessness, little sprinkles here and there, but evil. Evil and wickedness being all over the place in high intensity. How can you reconcile God being love and our world being this way? These seem to be not capable to coexist, and yet these are the realities that we are confronted. There is evil. We don't need supernatural manifestations to know that evil is out there. We see it in the news. We see it probably in our own lives. But that God is love, that is what we're going to be exploring in this study. God can say good things about himself all he wants, but the world he claims to have created doesn't match his words. Either he is lying, or what other possible answers could it be? And hopefully you'll stick around to hear some of these other possible answers. So question number 4 says, is God responsible for pain and evil? And this is a very significant verse because it's not just one of the many verses that addresses this issue, but this is Jesus himself speaking, relating to a parable of an individual planting good seed and then harvesting and seeing other things show up in the field. And the servants approaching the master saying, "Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares?" And the master responds to them, "An enemy has done this." Now, before we go any further, I want to encourage you to go to the channel and look for supplemental video number 1. Because some of us, as I said in that video, may struggle with some of these things. We're struggling believing that there's God in the first place. Evil in this world has discouraged us from that idea. And maybe we have just simply said, it's better to not live believing that there is a good God, because if this is good, then I don't want him. Well, maybe you are willing to consider the idea that there's a God that exists. But the Bible doesn't invite us to believe just that God exists, but that there are other beings called angels. And you may be struggling with processing that. Well, I encourage you to watch that video. There may be also other questions that you might have that I'm not even addressing here. Please leave those questions in the comments or send me a WhatsApp. And we can meet through WhatsApp, Zoom, or Google Meet. If you would like to have a personal one-on-one virtual meeting, I'll be happy to do that, so that way you get to ask the questions and hopefully we can explore the answers from the Bible. But some answers are an answer that provokes more questions, and this is one of those. Jesus gives us an answer. Why is there evil? If you only planted good seed, where did this evil stuff come from? And Jesus' response is an enemy. Great. Now we have questions. Now we have more questions. Who is this enemy? Where did this enemy come from? Whose enemy is this individual anyways? Of course, the Bible will point us in this direction consistently as well. Question number 5 says, how is Satan working in the world today? Revelation 12:12 says, therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time. And I just want to point out 2 things. The question says, how is Satan working in our world today? And in the verse, it says, for the devil. Now, if you know anything, you may know this, that they're the same individual, but you may not know that this is not actual names. These are not like Ariel is my name. These are more like adjectives, descriptors. The Bible from the beginning and consistently presents the involvement of spiritual beings called angels. And this particular one that is named Satan in Hebrew, or devil, diabolos in Greek, both of those words actually mean enemy. So when Jesus answers the question in that parable of the servants, who has done this, and says the enemy, in the disciples of Jesus and anyone in that time who were familiar with Greek and Hebrew would have known that this was in reference to the enemy, the one called Satan, the one called devil. And in this verse, it speaks about an intensity of the enemy's efforts being in proportion to his desperation, knowing that his time is running out to take as many as possible to eternal loss. How is Satan especially targeting those people who have faith in God? Revelation 12:17 says, and the dragon was enraged with the woman and went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. This enemy, this adversary, this Satan, this devil, he's an enemy of ethics and morals, God's law. He hates it. This enemy has a specific target. It is not a geographic target, not a socioeconomic target, not an ethnic target, not an academic, not even a religious target. His target is every human heart that is open to embrace the divine principles of ethics and morality for living life, God's 10 Commandments. And when you begin to embrace and begin to understand the genius behind this short statement of life and how they truly allow you and I to live life to its fullest, you become a target for this enemy. We'll explore that more in this lesson. We're going to address now this question. Well, apparently he's a created being. Why did God make him this way? Well, before we ask that, that question assumes God created him this way. A more appropriate question would be, did God create him this way? Ezekiel 28:15 tells us, you were perfect in your ways from the day you were created till iniquity was found in you. This is a succinct statement of he was a created being, but when he came out of God's creative power, he was perfect until a moment in which iniquity, which is another word for sin or evil, was discovered within this being. We're going to start unpacking this and moving a little bit slower. What is sin and how did it come to exist? This iniquity. How could something created perfect all of a sudden find something imperfect, especially if God created them perfect like this? It is impossible to try and explain the origin of sin while also trying to give a reason for its existence. It's a loaded statement. Sin is an invader, and no reason can be given for its presence. It is inexplicable because to try and rationalize its existence is to defend it. In other words, sin is a principle that manifested itself for no reason at all. There was no justifiable reason for sin to exist, to have manifested itself in the heart of this being called Lucifer, who became the enemy. The best definition of sin is given in the Bible. Sin is the transgression of God's law for a reason. This is because sin places within the human heart or any being's heart that embraces its principles unreasonable and unmerited animosity against God. Thus, I rebel against his law of ethics and morals. I'm just going to give you an example. If in my home, I made a rule that no one in my home will smoke cigarettes. No one in my home will smoke cigarettes. But my oldest daughter and I begin to have issues and conflict and fights and disagreements because now my daughter is starting to not love me and she's angry at me and words like, I hate you, are coming out of her mouth. What might she likely start doing if she knows that in my house I have a law that says we will not smoke cigarettes in my house? What might she start doing? Is it because she loves the stinky smell and she loves yellow teeth and yellow fingernails? Probably not. It's because of our broken relationship. And so the animosity the adversary has against God's law is not because the law is bad, but because he hates God. And he hates anyone that begins to recognize that worshiping God, not having any other gods, and etc., etc. We'll explore that the law of God, how it's a blessing for humanity, is completely misunderstood. The enemy hates it, and he wants you and I to hate it as well, because he knows that within it we find meaning, purpose, and healing. Question number 8. What special ability has God given to his children? The same gift that your children and my children have, which is the gift of choice. Like I said in the previous illustration, my daughter would choose to start practicing that habit of smoking, not because she necessarily likes it, but simply because she hates me. And because she hates me, she hates my laws. And that is a choice that, well, it's there. And if you were to ask me, if you were to have your daughter go this route, or if we could have somehow a gadget that you could, zap her, and all of a sudden, Daddy, I love you. I will obey every word out of your mouth. Daddy, I love you. Whatever you tell me to do, I will do because I love you. Is that love? And as hard as it is for me to say this, it would be better for my daughter to have this aspect of her life, though I would hate it and it would hurt my heart. But because should she change her mind, should I approach her and reason with her and labor with her and demonstrate how selfless I am towards her and hope that she recapacitates and rethinks life, and through life and experience maybe recognize maybe this was not the best decision. You really were not against me. You were not trying to control me. Hopefully through that, one day she may come and say, Daddy, I'm so sorry. And Daddy, because I've seen how patient you've been with me, how forgiving, how generous and kind, I also love you. Which of those two do you think I prefer? The remote control daughter, or the daughter with the freedom to choose to love me for who I am, or to choose to rebel against me? Well, within the context of love, remember that God was described as God is love. This is the hinging principle. Love does not force. Love does not demand. Love does not put a shotgun in the face and say, do you love me? And with this, it brings a sobering reality. If we have been given this ability to choose, then my destiny is not forged by other people, by fate or DNA or other forces outside of myself, not even by God. My future destiny is the outcome of my present choice. Question number 9. Why did Lucifer rebel against God? Isaiah 14:12 through 14. How are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? For you have said in your heart, I will exalt my throne above the stars. I will be like the Most High. Now the verse was abbreviated, but there's 6 times that it says I, which reveals to us this principle of sin, what it did to this being that embraced it, that received it, and allowed it to take a hold of his heart, his mind. It made him completely self-focused. Remember the definition of love? Love does not seek his own. It is not self-focused. It is not selfish. That's what love is not. Well, that is exactly what sin is. And you see it right here. Lucifer became deluded, deceived by himself into thinking that he, a created being, could somehow become God, deity. But that is what he coveted. That is what he longed to be. I will be like the Most High. Sorry, I forgot to switch the slide. Pride is the most self-destructive character trait. Pride inevitably produces within our thoughts and feelings the attitude of coveting. Coveting is the insatiable desire of something for that which I cannot and will not obtain ever. This leads us to choosing self-destructive attitudes and behaviors. Question number 10. Does the Bible give any further indications as to why Satan rebelled against God? Ezekiel 28:12 through 17. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You were perfect in your ways from the days you were created until iniquity was found in you. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. This gives us an understanding of how this transfers of sin into the mind of this being brought down to our experience as humans has affected us. The commodity of exploitation. Interesting that in our society, and all societies really, just in different ways, we have identified beauty as a most valuable commodity. Throughout human history, beauty has become a very profitable industry that seduces us to treat others and ourselves as objects, as non-humans. And I'm going to share briefly with you a video that I discovered many years ago. You may have seen it already, about the beauty industry. And one of the targets are, of course, young ladies. And there's no audio. You can check out the rest of the videos and others at the link that is listed there. But I'll show you this short video. You see this, average-looking woman, but now she's going to receive hours of professional makeup artists coming and putting very expensive materials on her face and doing things with her face. And then, of course, very professional hairstylists that get paid a lot of money to spend a lot of time doing her hair, and then a professional photographer, that one shot. And it doesn't end there, though. This is a professional Adobe individual, that photo software that will tweak and move things around so that it can create a final product that gets put in magazine covers and billboards. And then little girls are told, this is what you got to look like. This is what you have to compete against. And I love the caption at the end. No wonder our perception of beauty is distorted. Why do we do this to ourselves? It is because of this same principle of sin that manifested itself in the heart of the enemy. He corrupted himself for the sake of his beauty. He became so obsessed with the external at the expense of the internal. 11. What was the result of Lucifer's rebellion against God? Revelation 12:17. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. And this is not swords or guns or anything like that. This is a way more insidious war. Why hate God? This was a war of words. Words spoken with the intent to create distrust in God's character and motive. Though there was no justifiable reason to distrust or reject or hate God, sin distorts our mind's view of his motives, which leads us to rebel against God, thinking it is the right thing to do. That is the war that took place in heaven. Question number 12 says, where is the war between God and evil currently being played out? Revelation 12:9. So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Remember what I just said? The reason I'm moving this is because these are all connected. It started with words. Words that insinuated. Words that caused provocative responses from those that were listening. Words that eventually led perfect beings that were perfectly happy to be unhappy and discontented with their state and blame God for their discontentment and feelings of dissatisfaction. I have a question for you. Do you know how to kill 6 million people? History tells us how this happened. History tells us how this tragic, horrendous event took place, of millions of individuals, children included, that had nothing to do with nothing. How could 6 million people be killed? And it's a very simple answer. It's found in the Bible. It's been what we have been discussing all along. It is words. Distort reality through the use of words. Words become thoughts. Thoughts become feelings. And thoughts and feelings elevate and escalate to the point where they become actions. Number 13. How can we know how God feels about the human family? John 14:9 says, he who has seen me has seen the Father. And John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. We'll expand a bit more, but you are beginning to understand the reason why God came in Jesus. Why Jesus is God in human form, fully. He didn't want any more misunderstandings or excuses. When we see Jesus in the Gospels, we are seeing God. When we are seeing Jesus defend the helpless and powerless, healing the broken, bringing hope and aspirations to those that had lost all hope, that's God. The gentleness and the meekness and the kindness of Jesus is a revelation of God himself. Jesus says, he who has seen me has seen the Father. We will expand on this, but now you're beginning to understand the importance of Christ in the radar of faith in the human heart. How could the temporal understand the eternal? How can the finite comprehend the infinite? Unless God chooses to reveal himself by that which we could understand, another human being, Jesus Christ. Question number 14. How did human beings become involved in the sin issue troubling our world? Genesis 3:6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took off its fruit and ate. And before we even discuss this, I want to address this. Talking serpents? Really? I will create another supplemental video. There will be a lot of those, in which I will discuss this subject. What does the Bible ask us to believe? Am I required to believe in talking serpents? Must I surrender reason and intellect for the sake of faith? Or can I keep all three intact? I hope you will subscribe to this channel so that when I upload these videos, you're notified, because I want to address this. I don't want to ignore this reality of that many people struggle with this. So back to that verse. Every tree, if you read Genesis chapter 2, had these two qualities. It was pleasant to the eyes and it was good for food. But this third one, Eve discerned, had a third quality, one that God had not mentioned. Eve coveted, and it's the same Hebrew word found in Exodus chapter 20, verse 17, and that's the last of the 10 commandments. You shall not covet. She coveted, becoming like God. The statement prior to that was, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, you will become like God. The same virus, the same symptoms that Lucifer had. I will set my throne above the stars. I will be like the most high. That was inserted into the human mind through words that became thoughts and feelings that led to actions. Humanity has inherited this natural predisposition to unwarranted discontentment and ingratitude. Question number 15. Where is Satan's desire for worship ultimately going to lead planet Earth? Revelation 13:8. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. What I choose to worship is a reflection of what my heart truly values. Jesus says in Luke 12:34, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. We love what we worship, and we worship what we love. Where is the treasure of a selfish, prideful heart? Question number 16. What is Satan's ultimate fate in this conflict between good and evil? Revelation 20, verse 10. The devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. Now, there's a lot there. He's going to focus on this. This is not an act of rage on behalf of God or revenge. This is an honoring of the choices of his creatures. To reject the life giver is to choose death. Proverbs 8:36 says, in regards to God, but he who sins against me wrongs his own soul. All those who hate me love death. Question number 17. In a world of sin and suffering, what do people have to look forward to? 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 13. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. Now, it's not just that it's new, but it's new in this sense. The reality God offers as an eternal experience is one in which all who are there want and choose the principles of love revealed in God's law, which means that this is the new earth because there is no corruption. There is no exploitation. There is no the powerful exploiting the poor at any expense and trampling upon them and ignoring their needs and their rights. That will not be there. And individuals that love that kind of life, they will not be there either. Question number 18. How can a person be sure they will live in the earth without Satan and sin? Ephesians 2:8. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourself. It is the gift of God. In Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. A lot is said there. So what we're going to do is create another supplemental video in which I will explain grace, something that many people think or take for granted that they know what it is. It is not the prayer that you say before a meal. What is grace? Do you understand what it means, and what faith means as well? I want to talk about the great anti-faith. What exactly is faith? Of course, we're going to talk about that, and what can prevent us from fully experiencing faith in our lives. And I used to think that the opposite of faith was doubt, and in that supplemental video, you will see that it is not. I would love to think what you think is the opposite of faith. You can leave a comment below or send me a message via text, via WhatsApp. And if you would like to discuss this further, we'd love to have a virtual meeting with you. So you can request for one via Zoom, Google Meet, or even WhatsApp. It allows for that feature as well. The next lesson that we're going to be looking at is Hope for a Planet in Crisis. I hope that this study has helped you understand at least some of the answers the Bible provides. I hope that some of the answers that the Bible has provided has helped you reconcile this reality that we can look at the evil around us and not deny it, but in spite of that, recognize this was not God's plan nor desire, and He has provided a solution through His Son Jesus Christ to resolve this issue of evil in our planet, in our hearts. And I hope that this has been helpful for you. I look forward to seeing you in study lesson number 4.